My parents charged me $900 a month rent the day I turned 18. I paid it for 1 month, then found a place for $550 with friends. They called screaming about family loyalty. I mentioned their loyalty first, and everything they lost when I left. Hey Reddit, my parents decided to turn me into their personal ATM and chauffeur the second I turned 18. Charged me $900 a month to share a room with my brother while making me pay half of every bill and run their errands like an unpaid assistant. I paid it for exactly 1 month before finding my own place for $550. What followed was absolute chaos when they realized their meal ticket just walked out the door. So I'm 23 male, sitting here in my own apartment, finally able to sleep past 6 a.m. on a Saturday without someone banging on my door demanding I drive my sister to the mall. It's been 5 months since I moved out, and my parents are still losing their minds about it. But before I get into the current nightmare, let me paint you a picture of what my life was like living under their roof. My childhood was pretty standard until I hit about 15. That's when my parents decided I was old enough to start contributing to the household. Sounded reasonable at first. Helping with chores, maybe mowing the lawn, normal teenager stuff. Except their version of contributing looked more like a full-time job I wasn't getting paid for. Started with driving my younger siblings around. I got my license at 16 and immediately became the family chauffeur. My brother Jake was 13 and played travel soccer, which meant practices 3 times a week and games every weekend. My sister Lily was 11 and did dance, gymnastics, and some kind of art class that changed locations every other month. My parents both worked, sure, but their schedules were pretty flexible. Dad managed a mid-size insurance office and could leave whenever he wanted. Mom worked part-time at a dental practice, usually done by 3. But apparently their time was too valuable to spend shuttling kids around, so that became my job. Every afternoon after school, I'd drive Jake to soccer practice 20 minutes across town, wait around for an hour and a half because going home wasn't worth the gas, then drive him back, 3 times a week, minimum. Weekends meant tournament drives that could be 2 hours each way, sometimes longer if they were out of state. Lily's schedule was worse because her activities were scattered all over the place. Dance studio on the north side, gymnastics across town, art class in some strip mall that changed locations like they were running from the law. I'd spend my entire evening in parking lots doing homework in my car or just staring at my phone waiting for her to finish. My parents never offered gas money. When I brought it up, Dad said the car was theirs, so gas was covered under household expenses. The car was a 2008 Honda Civic with 180,000 miles that I was only allowed to use for family purposes. If I wanted to go somewhere with friends, I had to ask permission, and the answer was usually no because someone needed a ride somewhere. Then came the errands. Grocery runs became my responsibility around age 16. Mom would text me a list while I was at school, and I was expected to stop at the store on my way home. Not a short list either. Full shopping trips with 30 items, half of which the store never had in stock, so I'd have to go to a second location. When I got home with groceries, my parents would be on the couch watching TV while I unloaded everything and put it away. If I complained, Dad would remind me they worked all day and deserved to relax. I'd been at school all day, then driven around for 2 hours, then grocery shopped, but apparently that didn't count as real work. Post office runs, dry cleaning pickups, returning items to stores because Mom changed her mind, dropping stuff off at relatives' houses. If it involved leaving the house, it became my job. My weekends were just long lists of tasks I needed to complete while my parents caught up on shows or went to brunch with friends. The kicker was I couldn't get a real job because I was too busy being their personal assistant. Applied to work at this local restaurant that paid decent money for someone my age. Got the job, was supposed to start the following Monday. Told my parents at dinner, feeling pretty good about finally having my own money. Dad's response, "Who's going to drive your brother to practice?" "You could do it," I suggested. "Or Mom. The restaurant is only 3 nights a week, and practice is Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I could work the other days." "We have commitments those nights," Mom said, "and we need you available for errands." A job would interfere with family responsibilities. I was 16. They wouldn't let me get a job because it would interfere with my unpaid labor for them. I had to call the restaurant and turn down the position. The manager sounded disappointed and confused why a kid would turn down work. I didn't know how to explain my parents needed a free employee more than I needed money. School became my only escape. I was a solid B student who could have been an A student if I'd had time to study. Instead, I was cramming for tests in parking lots between sibling activities and writing essays at 1 a.m. after finishing everyone else's errands for the day. Teachers would ask why I looked exhausted all the time. I'd make up excuses about poor sleep or staying up too late playing video games. Couldn't exactly tell them my parents were treating me like their personal assistant, And I'd been awake until midnight the previous night because Jake needed a ride home from a friend's house 40 minutes away. My senior year, I applied to colleges. Got accepted to a decent state school about 3 hours from home. Not my dream school, but solid academics and far enough away that I couldn't commute. I was counting down the days until I could escape this whole mess. That's when my parents dropped their master plan on me. We were at dinner when Dad cleared his throat in that way that meant he had something important to announce. I figured he was going to tell me they'd found some new way to make me useful over the summer before college started. We've been thinking about your college situation, Dad began, and we don't think it makes financial sense for you to move to campus when you could attend community college here and live at home. My stomach dropped. But I already got accepted. I sent in my deposit. We'll get that refunded, Mom said. Community college is much more affordable, and you can transfer after 2 years. Plus, we need you here. Need me for what? Well, someone has to drive Jake and Lily around. They're getting busier with their activities. Jake made the elite travel team, which means more practices and weekend tournaments. Lily just joined the competitive gymnastics team. We're going to need more help, not less. There it was. They didn't want me to go to college because it would interfere with my role as their unpaid chauffeur and errand boy. My future was less important than their convenience. I should have fought harder. Should have demanded they honor my college acceptance. But at 17, I didn't really know I had options. They controlled everything, my car access, my finances, even my paperwork. So I went along with it. Enrolled at the local community college that fall. Decent school, not what I wanted, but figured I'd make it work for 2 years and then transfer. At least I'd be away from home during the day and could maybe get a part-time job. Wrong on both counts. Community college classes were only 3 days a week, which my parents saw as more availability for family duties. And when I tried getting a job again, got the same answer. Family responsibilities came first. Those 2 years were a continuation of high school. Drive siblings around, run errands, do what I was told. Except now, I was also taking college classes. So I had even less time for myself. My social life was non-existent because I never had free time to hang out with anyone. Made a friend named Connor in one of my classes. Good guy, similar major, actually understood what I was going through because he had demanding parents too. We'd grab lunch between classes sometimes when I wasn't running errands. Connor lived off campus with 2 roommates in a house they rented. Paid $400 a month each plus utilities. I'd go over there occasionally, and it felt like visiting another planet. They had their own space, made their own schedules, ate when they wanted, came and went as they pleased. Basic adult freedom that seemed impossible for me. Why don't you just move out? Connor asked one day. Can't afford it. I don't have a job. Get a job then. Problem solved. He made it sound so simple. But every time I'd tried getting work, my parents shut it down. They needed me available for their endless list of tasks. The idea that I could just leave hadn't really occurred to me because I'd been conditioned to think their needs came first. Then came my 18th birthday. I'd been thinking about what Connor said. Started looking at job postings online during my free time. If I could find something that paid decent money, maybe I could save up and move out in a year or so. Get some independence. Finally start living my own life. My birthday fell on a Tuesday. Nothing special planned, just another day. Came home from class around noon expecting maybe we'd do dinner or something low-key. Instead, found both parents sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread out in front of them. Sit down, Dad said. We need to discuss your living arrangements now that you're 18. Living arrangements. That was an odd way to phrase it since I'd been living there my entire life. Mom slid a paper across the table. It was a lease agreement. An actual formal lease for living in my own house with my own family. Starting immediately, you'll be paying $900 per month in rent, Dad explained. That covers your share of the mortgage, utilities, food, and general household expenses. Payment is due on the 1st of each month. I stared at the paper. $900. I didn't have $900. I didn't have any money because they wouldn't let me work. I don't have a job, I said slowly. Then you should get one, Mom replied. You're an adult now. Adults pay their own way. The irony was incredible. For years, they'd prevented me from working because I was too useful as free labor. Now that I was legally an adult, suddenly I needed to pay them nearly $1,000 a month to live in the same house I'd grown up in. And just to be clear, Dad continued, rent is just your base cost. You'll also be responsible for paying half of the household bills. Electric, water, internet, that kind of thing. We'll split everything 50-50 since there are 2 adults in the house now. 2 adults. Me and them. Like Jake and Lily weren't living there too. But apparently they didn't count as adults who should contribute. Your responsibilities around the house will continue as they have been, Mom added. driving your siblings, running errands, helping with household tasks. That's part of being a contributing member of this family. So I'd be paying $900 a month plus half of all bills, while still doing all the unpaid labor I'd been doing for years. And I'd be doing it while sharing a room with Jake, because that was part of the arrangement. You'll share a room with your brother, Dad confirmed when I asked. The spare bedroom is being converted into Mom's office space, and Lily needs her privacy as she gets older. This arrangement makes the most sense. I was 18 years old, being charged nearly $1,000 a month to sleep on a twin bed, in a room I shared with my 15-year-old brother who stayed up until midnight gaming with his headphones on, while still being expected to chauffeur everyone around and handle all the household errands. I need time to think about this, I said. Nothing to think about, Dad replied. You're an adult now. This is how adults live. You can accept these terms and continue living here, or you can find somewhere else to go. That last part was clearly meant to be a threat, like I couldn't possibly survive on my own. Where would I go? How would I afford anything? But something shifted in that moment. The same parents who'd spent years making sure I couldn't work or save money were now demanding I pay them an amount that would require me to work full-time. The hypocrisy was so blatant it actually cleared my head. I signed their lease. They looked satisfied, like they'd successfully transitioned me from free labor to paying labor. Then I went upstairs to the room I shared with Jake and started planning my escape. Found a job posting that same night. Hardware store about 20 minutes away was hiring for full-time positions. Flexible scheduling, decent pay. Benefits after 90 days. Applied immediately. Got a call back 2 days later. Interview went well. The manager asked if I could start immediately. I said yes. He seemed surprised by my enthusiasm, but I wasn't about to explain that I'd been prevented from working for years and was desperately trying to escape my living situation. Started the following Monday. 40 hours a week at $16 an hour. Came home that first week with a check for $640 minus taxes. After my parents' rent and half the bills, I'd have maybe $150 left for the month. Couldn't save anything. Couldn't afford to move out. Basically trapped. My first week working full-time, I got home around 6 p.m. exhausted from learning new systems and unloading deliveries all day. Collapsed on my bed wanting nothing more than to close my eyes for 20 minutes before dinner. Mom knocked on my door 10 minutes later. Lily needs a ride to gymnastics. You need to leave in 15 minutes. Can Dad take her? I just worked 8 hours and I'm beat. Your father is busy, and your responsibilities haven't changed just because you have a job now. So I dragged myself off the bed, grabbed the keys, and drove Lily 30 minutes to gymnastics. Waited in the parking lot for 2 hours doing nothing, because going home wasn't worth the gas. Drove her back. Got home at 10 p.m., heated up leftovers because I'd missed dinner, then passed out. That became my routine. Work 8 hours, come home exhausted, immediately get dispatched for sibling transportation duty or errand runs. I was working full-time and still functioning as their unpaid assistant. The bills came in mid-month. Electric, water, internet, and apparently now I was also responsible for half the gas bill, even though most of the gas usage was me driving their kids around. Came out to an additional $340 on top of rent. Did the math one night. After rent and bills, I was taking home about $200 a month from my full-time job. $200. That's what I had for gas, food outside the house, clothes, and any basic necessity they didn't feel like covering. Meanwhile, Jake and Lily continued living rent-free, getting driven everywhere, having all their activities and expenses covered by our parents. I was essentially subsidizing their lifestyle while working full-time and being treated like the help. Started looking for apartments during my lunch breaks. Anything in my budget. The cheapest studios I could find were $800 a month plus utilities, and most required first and last month's rent up front. Even if I saved every penny, it would take me 6 months to save $1,600, and that's assuming nothing came up. Then Connor texted me about his living situation changing. One of his roommates was moving out in 3 weeks, and they needed someone to fill the spot. Rent was $450 a month plus utilities, which worked out to about $550 total depending on usage. His other roommate had a friend interested, but Connor wanted to offer me first. $550. Almost half what my parents were charging me. And I'd have my own room, my own space, my own life. Did the math obsessively that night. If I could cover my parents' rent for this month, I'd have about 3 weeks to save up enough for first month's rent at Connor's place. Between paychecks and if I was careful, I could make it work. Barely. Told Connor I was interested. He said great. Move-in date was the 1st of next month, which meant I had exactly 3 weeks to save $550 and tell my parents I was moving out. Those 3 weeks were intense. Worked as many hours as they'd give me, Picked up an extra shift when someone called in sick. Skipped lunch most days to save money. Stopped getting coffee on my way to work. Every penny went into a savings account my parents didn't know about. Came home every day and continued the routine. Drive siblings around, run errands, hand over rent money, act like everything was normal. My parents had no idea I was planning to leave. Jake started getting suspicious around week 2. He'd wake up sometimes and find me looking at apartment listings on my phone at 1 a.m. "You moving out?" he asked one night. "Maybe," I said. "When?" "Soon." "Are you going to keep driving me places?" That question hit different. Like he'd gotten so used to me being his personal chauffeur that he couldn't imagine life without it. He wasn't worried about losing his brother. He was worried about losing his ride. "Probably not," I admitted. He just shrugged and went back to his video game. Didn't ask any follow-up questions, didn't seem particularly concerned. Just accepted that his free transportation service might be ending. 2 days before move-out day, I calculated my finances one last time. Had $580 saved up. Enough for rent and utilities with a tiny buffer. Packed my essential belongings in boxes and garbage bags. Didn't have much since most of my money had gone to my parents, but I had enough to get started. The morning of the 1st, I loaded my car while my parents were at work and Jake was at school. Took 3 trips to get everything over to Connor's place. Texted my parents that I needed to talk to them when they got home. Both arrived around the same time, 5:30 p.m. Found them in the kitchen where I'd left a note saying to meet me there. "What's this about?" Dad asked. "We have plans tonight. I'm moving out," I said simply. "I found a place with some friends. Rent's cheaper, and I'll have my own room. I'm packed and already moved my stuff." The silence was thick enough to cut. Mom looked confused, like I'd just told her I was speaking a foreign language. Dad's face was turning red in that way it does when he's about to lose his temper. "You can't just move out," Mom finally said. "We have a lease agreement." "Month-to-month lease," I corrected. "I paid this month's rent. I'm giving you notice I won't be paying next month." "This is incredibly selfish," Dad said, voice rising. "We need you here. Who's going to drive Jake to practice? Who's going to take Lily to her activities?" "You could," I suggested. "Or Mom. Or Jake's old enough to get his license soon." "That's not the point. You have responsibilities to this family." "Had responsibilities," I corrected. Past tense. "I'm an adult now, remember?" "That's what you said. Adults make their own choices about where to live." Mom tried the guilt angle. "After everything we've done for you. Put a roof over your head, fed you, raised you. This is how you repay us? I just paid you $900 to share a room with my brother while doing all your errands and driving your kids around. I'm pretty sure we're even." "That's different. That's contributing to household expenses." "Right. Household expenses. For a house I'm not going to be living in anymore." Dad tried commanding me to unpack my stuff and get back home. When I explained it was already at my new place, he threatened to come get it. I reminded him it was my property, and that would be theft. He didn't have a legal leg to stand on since I was an adult paying my own way. The argument went in circles for another 20 minutes. Them insisting I couldn't leave. Me explaining I already had. Finally, I said I needed to go because Connor was waiting for me at the new place. "Don't expect to come crawling back when things don't work out," Dad warned. "You make this choice. You live with it." "Planning on it," I said. Walked out of that house feeling lighter than I had in years. Got in my car and drove to Connor's place, where he and our other roommate helped me unload the last of my boxes. We ordered pizza, sat around talking about random stuff, and I went to bed in my own room with my own door that locked. Best sleep I'd had in years. The first 2 weeks were almost surreal. Woke up when I wanted. Made breakfast without someone immediately handing me a grocery list. Went to work and came home without being dispatched for transportation duty. Just lived my life like a normal person. Then the texts started. Mom began with guilt. Jake missed practice because no one could drive him. He's so disappointed. Lily followed up. "Why aren't you helping the family anymore? Did we do something wrong?" Dad went straight to anger. "You've abandoned your responsibilities. This is disgraceful behavior." I didn't respond to most of them. When I did, I kept it simple. "You have 2 cars and 2 parents. Figure it out." Week 3 brought the real nuclear option. Mom called me screaming about family loyalty. How could I abandon them like this? Didn't I understand they needed me? I was being incredibly selfish and immature. Let her rant for about 3 minutes before I said, "You charged me $900 a month to share a room with Jake while making me pay half of all the bills and do all your errands. My current rent is $550 for my own room, and I don't have to drive anyone anywhere or run to the store every other day. This isn't about loyalty. This is about math." "It's not about money," she insisted. "It's about family." If it's about family, why did you charge me more than double what I'm paying now for a worse living situation? She didn't have an answer for that. Tried pivoting to how much they'd done for me, how ungrateful I was being, how I'd regret this decision. When none of that worked, she hung up on me. Dad called an hour later. His approach was more businesslike. He'd calculated that my departure was costing them approximately $1,240 per month between my rent, half of bills, and the errands I used to run that now required their time and gas money. We need you to start contributing again, he said. Not living here is your choice, but that doesn't absolve you of family responsibilities. Actually, it does, I replied. I'm not living there. I don't owe you anything. You owe us 18 years of providing for you. That's called being a parent. That's literally what you're legally required to do. I don't owe you money for not abandoning me as a child. He threatened to sue me for breach of contract. I reminded him the lease was month to month, I'd paid my last month, and I'd followed all the terms. There was no breach. He hung up on me too. Week 4 brought family members. My aunt called saying she'd heard about the situation and was disappointed in my behavior. When I explained the actual circumstances, she got quiet, then said maybe my parents had made some mistakes. But family forgives. I told her she was welcome to move in with them and pay $900 a month if family was so important. My uncle tried the reasonable approach. Both sides probably had valid points. Maybe I could help out occasionally? Drive the kids on weekends? I explained I worked weekends now since I'd picked up extra shifts. He asked if I could switch my schedule. I asked if he was volunteering to subsidize my lost wages. He changed the subject. But the real entertainment came when my parents realized just how much my departure had affected their daily lives. Jake's soccer suffered because he started missing practices. Turns out when your chauffeur quits, it's hard to maintain a schedule. Mom tried taking him after work, but her part-time schedule didn't always line up with practice times. Dad could take him, but that meant leaving work early or missing networking events. The solution they came up with was making Jake quit the elite travel team and join a local rec league that practiced closer to home. Jake was furious. He'd worked years to make that team, and now he was getting demoted because I wasn't around to drive him anymore. Lily's activities got scaled back too. Gymnastics stayed, but dance and art class got cut. Too many locations, too much driving, too much scheduling complexity without their free chauffeur service. Lily blamed me completely, sending me passive-aggressive texts about how I'd ruined her future as a dancer. The errands became their problem too. Mom was doing grocery shopping again, which she hated. Dad was handling post office runs and other random tasks, which he also hated. They'd gotten so used to delegating everything to me that they'd forgotten how time-consuming basic household management actually was. Week 6 brought the biggest meltdown. Mom called me sobbing about how they couldn't keep up with everything. Between work, the kids' reduced schedules, and all the household tasks, they were exhausted. Couldn't I please come back? They'd reduced the rent to $600. I'm paying $550 where I am now, I reminded her. But we need you. You needed an employee. You got one. Then he found a better job. That's when she played her final card. What if something happened to Jake? Or Lily? What if they needed a ride somewhere and no one was available? I'd never forgive myself if something bad happened, because I wasn't there to help. You're their parents, I said. That's your responsibility, not mine. You figure it out like every other parent does. She hung up crying. Dad tried one more approach around week 8, professional negotiation. He'd clearly thought this through because he came with an actual proposal. They'd reduce my rent to $500 a month. I wouldn't have to share a room anymore because they'd converted Mom's office back into a bedroom. I'd only be responsible for a quarter of the bills instead of half, and I'd only need to drive the kids to their activities twice a week instead of every time. So I'd be paying almost the same as I am now for more responsibility, I said. You'd be living at home, with your family. The family that charged me $900 a month to share a room with my brother, while treating me like hired help. We made mistakes, he admitted. That was probably the closest he'd ever come to apologizing. We didn't realize how much we were asking. We can do better. I'm sure you can, I said, but I'm good where I am. You're really going to throw away your family over this? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just not paying you to exploit me anymore. That shut down the negotiations pretty quickly. Over the next few months, I settled into my new life, picked up more hours at work and got promoted to shift supervisor, which came with a raise. Started taking online classes again, this time in something I actually wanted to study instead of what my parents had suggested. Made friends with Connor's other roommate, guy named Brett who worked in construction, and taught me some basic handyman skills. My weekends became my own. Sometimes I'd hang out with Connor and Brett. Other times, I'd just sit on our couch doing absolutely nothing, enjoying the simple pleasure of not having to drive anyone anywhere or run someone else's errands. The financial difference was staggering. After rent and utilities at Connor's place, I had actual money left over. Started building a savings account, bought a newer car because my old Honda was barely running. Got a haircut at an actual salon instead of the cheap place my parents used. Started eating better because I could afford groceries I actually wanted instead of whatever was on mom's list. 3 months in, I ran into Lily at the store. She was with mom, who tried to pretend she didn't see me. Lily didn't have that same restraint. "You know I had to quit gymnastics," she said, "because no one can drive me anymore." "That's unfortunate," I replied. "Maybe they should have thought about that before charging me $900 a month. They needed the money. They needed a chauffeur they could charge for the privilege of working." Mom finally acknowledged me, asking if I was happy now that I'd destroyed the family. I was actually pretty happy, yes. Sleeping well, not stressed constantly, had money in my savings account. Things were good. "You're selfish," Mom declared. "You always have been. I paid $900 a month to share a room and work for free. If I'm selfish, what does that make you?" She didn't have an answer. Just grabbed Lily and left. Watched them walk to their car, Mom probably complaining about me the entire time while Lily agreed because that's what she'd been trained to do. Around month 4, something unexpected happened. Connor's other roommate, Brett, needed to move out for work reasons. We needed a new roommate fast to cover his portion of rent. Started posting ads, meeting potential candidates, the usual process. Then Jake called me. Not Mom, not Dad. "Jake, can I move in with you?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. "You're 16. I'll be 17 in 2 months. And I'm losing my mind here. Ever since you left, they've been on me constantly about contributing more. I have to do all the stuff you used to do. I'm basically their new servant. Karma is beautiful sometimes. What do Mom and Dad say about this? They don't know I'm calling, but I can't do this anymore. They're talking about charging me rent when I turn 18 too. Same deal they gave you. I don't want to end up trapped like you were." At least he was learning. "You need to finish high school first. Then we'll talk. They're going to make me stay home and go to community college. Same thing they did to you. Then you'll have to decide if you want to fight that or not. But you're 16. I can't have you move in without their permission." He hung up frustrated, but I got it. He was seeing firsthand what I'd dealt with for years. Now he was the oldest kid at home, which meant he'd inherited all my former responsibilities. The driving, the errands, the endless demands on his time. And he was smart enough to see where it was heading. 2 weeks later, Dad called. Jake had apparently told them about our conversation, and they were not happy. "How dare you try to steal our son?" Dad said. "He called me. I told him he couldn't move in. You put ideas in his head about leaving." "I didn't put anything in his head. He figured it out himself after you turned him into your new unpaid assistant." "That's not what's happening." "Really? Is he doing all the driving now? Running your errands? Covering the responsibilities I used to handle?" Silence. Then, "He's learning responsibility. That's part of growing up." "Right. And when he turns 18, are you going to charge him $900 a month too?" More silence. "Thought so," I said. "Jake's smarter than I was. He sees this coming. Good for him." Dad threatened to cut me off completely if I kept poisoning Jake against the family. I reminded him we were already cut off. We barely spoke. I didn't visit. And I supported myself financially. There was nothing left to cut. Around month 5, the texts and calls slowed down. My parents apparently realized I wasn't coming back, wasn't going to help them out, and wasn't interested in reconciliation on their terms. But then I got an email from Dad about refinancing their mortgage. They needed my signature on something because of the previous lease agreement. Read through the document, had a friend who worked in real estate look it over. Turned out they'd taken out a second mortgage around the time they started charging me rent, and my signature from the lease was on some of the paperwork as a household member. Called Dad to discuss it. He explained they'd refinance to afford some home improvements. Nothing major, just updating the kitchen and bathrooms. But the bank needed all previous documentation cleared up, including my lease agreement showing I was no longer a resident. "So you took out a second mortgage, used my signature on lease documents to qualify for better terms, and now need me to sign off on the fact that I moved out?" "It's just a formality," he insisted. "How much were the home improvements?" "That's not relevant." "Dad, how much?" Long pause. "About $40,000. 40 grand. They'd refinanced their house for $40,000 in improvements right around the time they started charging me $900 a month, which meant they could have afforded not to charge me at all. They just wanted extra cash flow for their kitchen renovation. "I'll sign the paperwork," I said, but I want something in writing saying I'm released from any future claims related to that property or household expenses. That's already implied in the lease termination. Get it in writing from a lawyer, or I don't sign. He tried to argue, but I held firm. They needed my signature to clean up their refinancing mess. I needed legal protection from any future claims they might invent. Week later, got a letter from their lawyer confirming I had no financial obligations to the property. Signed their paperwork and sent it back. That was the last time I spoke to Dad. 5 months after moving out, I was having the time of my life. Work was going great. Got another promotion to assistant manager with a significant raise. Started dating this girl named Ashley, who worked at the coffee shop next to my work. We'd go out on actual dates where I could afford to pay for dinner and a movie without calculating if I'd have enough gas money to get to work the next week. Connor and I found a new roommate, guy named Phil, who worked night shifts as a hospital security guard. Perfect arrangement because he was quiet during the day while we were working, and we were quiet at night while he was gone. The three of us got along well, split everything fairly, and nobody tried to exploit anyone else's labor. Finished my associate degree through online classes. Started applying to 4-year programs at universities in the area. Got accepted to 2 of them with partial scholarships. Decided on the one with the better program for my major and enrolled to start in the fall. This was the life I'd been working toward. The life my parents had tried to prevent by keeping me locked down as their personal assistant. And it felt incredible. Then Jake turned 17. He called me on his birthday. They gave me a car, he said. That's good. It's the Honda, your old car. The one I'd driven into the ground shuttling them around for years. They'd held onto it after I bought my own vehicle, and apparently fixed it up enough to be Jake's birthday present. Cool, I said. So you can drive yourself places now. That's the thing. They expect me to drive Lily around, take her to practice, pick her up from friends' houses, do the grocery runs, all the stuff you used to do. So don't do it. They'll take the car back if I don't help out. And there it was. They'd given him a car specifically so he could become their new chauffeur. Same pattern, different kid. That's your choice to make, I told him. You can do what they want and be their employee, or you can stand up for yourself and deal with the consequences. Easy for you to say. You already got out. And you can too. In a year when you turn 18. But you'll have to make the same choice I did. He hung up frustrated. Couldn't blame him. Being in that situation with no clear way out was awful. But I'd shown him it was possible to leave. What he did with that information was up to him. Last month, got a Facebook message from my aunt, the one who'd called earlier to lecture me about family. She wanted to apologize. Apparently, she'd had dinner with my parents recently and seen firsthand how they talked about Jake's responsibilities. Started asking questions and got uncomfortable answers. I didn't realize how much they were using you, she wrote. Your mother tried to say it was normal contribution to the household, but asking a teenager to pay $900 a month while sharing a room? That's not normal. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. Appreciated the apology, but it didn't change anything. She'd believe them over me without question because that was easier. Now she felt guilty because the evidence was overwhelming. Are you going to talk to them about how they're treating Jake? I asked. I tried. They don't want to hear it. Said I'm interfering in their parenting? At least she tried. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.